so here's our last week of notes. Excellent. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is solving an equation. And when you're solving an equation, you're trying to get the variable by itself. So in this first one, to get the variable by itself, I want to move the 5. Right now it's added. So to undo adding, I'm going to subtract 5. If I subtract on the left, I also subtract on the right. So these 5's cancel out, and this gives me a 6 times x equals 12. Now, to solve it out from there, I'm going to divide by 6 because this is times, and so the opposite of times is to divide. So if I divide by 6 on the left, I divide by 6 on the right, and x is going to equal 2. And that's how that one looks. Looking at this one, the first thing you have to do is get rid of parentheses. And to get rid of parentheses, that means you're going to multiply all the way through. So 16 times 2 is 32, and 16 times 1 is 16. Now, to solve this out, we're still trying to get the x by itself. So we have to move the 16 and move the 32, and you start with the 16. So I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. So 32x would equal this value. So we're going to have to borrow, and I'm going to get an 8, and a 2, and a 1. There we go. So now I've got times. And now that to undo times, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 32. And x would equal something. Well, it helps if I write the number correctly. Okay, so I know that 3 times 4 is 12, so I'm going to try that. And that's going to give me an 8 and a 12, and that's going to work. So x equals 4. And that's how you're doing your basic algebra equations. Now, that leads us back to the word problems. And so we've got one word problem type here. I think there's one like this on your quiz as well. But you've got a high school class that has 445 students, and there are 97 more boys than girls. How many boys are in the class? Now, the main thing I want to show you is obviously how to solve it, but you have to be really careful. Sometimes the question is going to ask you for boys, and sometimes the question is going to ask you for girls. And if any of you ever have to take a praxis test to gain entry into the School of Education at one of our universities in the state, these types of questions are on the praxis, and they'll trick you. Sometimes you'll answer boys, and they were asking you for girls, or vice versa. So make sure you read the question fully. Now here's what I know. I know the number of boys plus the number of girls is 445. Okay, so I do know that. Boys plus girls is 445. I also know that there are 97 more boys than girls. So the number of boys is 97 more than girls. So there's 97 more. If you take girls and you add 97 to it, that gives you the boys. Now, the way that we're going to work this is called a system of equations, and we're going to work it by using substitution. See this b right here? I know that b is 97 plus g. So instead of writing b right here, I'm going to write this as 97 plus g. Okay? So I already have a g, and that equals 445. Now if I put those together, I'm going to get 97 plus 2g equals 445. I'm going to subtract 97. So 2g would equal, we'll subtract it out. Okay, so 15 minus 7 will give me 8. And I had to borrow, so I'm going to have to borrow one more time. 13 minus 9 would give me 4, and I can bring down the 3. So 2G is 348. I ran out of room. So to find out G, I'm going to divide by 2. So I can divide that out. So it goes 1 time, and 7 times, and 4 times. So G is going to be 174. Now don't fall for that trick and answer 174. It didn't ask you for the number of girls, right? It asked you for the number of boys. So once you find this G value right here, you're going to plug that into your boys formula. So the number of boys is 97 plus the number of girls. So if there are 174 girls, and there are 97 more boys than that, there should be 271 boys. And that's how you would get your answer. So the first part of this lesson this week is algebraic equations. So we did the basic ones right here. And then we did some with a little application or word problem. The next part that you have is something called functions. And a relation is a correspondence from one set to another, but a function is a special one that assigns to every element of the domain exactly one element of the range. In other words, if I have this x right here, it's going to go over to this value right here, but it can only go to one value. And so as long as it goes to exactly one value, then it is a function. The set of all first components is called the domain. Now, I always ask you that on a quiz. So this first part, that's always called the domain. And the set of all images is the range. And what I mean by images is something that's mapped to it. So if you have this one mapped and this one mapped, all of those blue dots that have something mapped to it, that's called the range. So the domain would be the set of inputs, and the range would be the set of outputs. Okay, now you've probably evaluated a function before. So here's an example of a function. F of x equals 2x squared plus 5x minus 4. And I'm asking you to plug in the number 2. So when I plug in the number 2, everywhere I see an x, I've got 2x squared plus 5x minus 4. Everywhere I see an x, I'm going to put a 2 in that place. I'm replacing all the x's with 2. Now, using your order of operation, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, exponents come first. So I've got this 2 out in front, and 2 squared is 4. So this is going to give me 2 times 4 is 8. 5 times 2 is 10 minus 4. So if you put those together, you get 18 minus 4, which is going to be the value 14. And that's how you would evaluate a function. I'm going to come back to this one. Back to this one. They also ask you to evaluate a function where they have like a word problem. And so it says the cost of a cab ride is calculated by this function, this cost function, where x is the number of miles. What is the charge for 25 miles? So basically, that's asking you for C of 25. So everywhere you see an x, you're going to put 25. So when we work this out using our please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, you're going to do multiplication first. So we get 5, 5, 7, and 2. And I see this is 1, 2 places. So 1, 2 places. So this is going to be 1. This is going to be not cooperating today. Let's see if I can scoot it up, see if that'll work. Okay, there we go. So this is 1.80, and this part is 27.55. So if I add them up, I get 29.35, and that's how much my cab ride was. Okay, so that's a little bit of functions. We have a little bit more function information left, but we'll go ahead and stop it here and get that done.